But after 2 years of no sleep and putting a lot of meth in my body, I went over to see my ex-girlfriend at her apartment. My 2 sons were there, and something just snapped. I did the same thing I did every time I was around them. I got angry and I yelled at them. I took things out on them that had nothing to do with them.
Stay tuned. Coming up, it's part 1 of my 2-part interview with Scott Gieselhart, discussing his challenges with post-traumatic stress and how it led him from a meth addiction and a suicide attempt to a career as a mental health counselor. But first, let's hear from our amazing sponsor, Midwest Fire. At Midwest Fire, they know better efficiency results in less waste, and it adds value to every truck they deliver. That's why they have worked hard to implement lean manufacturing processes throughout their factory. Lean manufacturing means a lower cost to build, with the savings passed on to you. To learn more, visit MidwestFire.com. Hello and welcome to Situational Awareness Matters Show, episode 333. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to prevent bad outcomes. Today's feature segment is sponsored by our new online training platform, Gassaway Virtual Training.
Rich Gassaway served as a first responder for 33 years. Now he's an online university professor, researcher, podcaster, blogger, author, and professional speaker. Rich is widely considered to be a trusted authority to help work teams improve situational awareness and high-risk decision-making outcomes. He has delivered over 2,500 live presentations worldwide and has helped more than 90,000 workers improve safety. Rich has authored 6 safety books, and his teachings have been featured and referenced in numerous books, research projects, journal articles, and podcast episodes. He has been presenting dynamic in-person training programs since 1992. And he has hosted virtual training courses since 2014. Some of Rich's most popular programs for first responders include How Smart First Responders Use Situational Awareness to Improve Safety, Firefighter Safety, Mistakes and Best Practices, and The Leader's Toolbox, Best Practices for Officer Success. His virtual learning platform makes it convenient to train your entire team at work, at home, or wherever they may be.
We now have 33 online programs for your members. Some of these programs are live events presented virtually, and some of them are pre-recorded programs. To learn more, visit samatters.com website and click on the Virtual Training tab. All right, let's jump into our feature segment, part 1 of my 2-part interview with Scott Gieselhart, discussing his challenges with post-traumatic stress and how it led him from a meth addiction and a suicide attempt to a career as a mental health counselor. Hey everybody, welcome to Situational Awareness Matters Show. I am super excited to have with me Scott Gieselhart, who served 24 years with the Frazee, Minnesota Fire Department, which is, I should say, like just up the road from where I live, but actually it's probably like hours away from where I live. But we're both Minnesotans. Well, Scott's living in North Dakota now, but that'll be part of the story. But we both served on fire departments in Minnesota, and Scott and I have known each other for a while. He had reached out to me and asked for some guidance about, breaking into the public speaking business, and told me his story. And it's an amazing story with amazing lessons to be learned for all first responders. So recently on my social media, I put out that I was looking to have some guests, and Scott reached out and said, hey, I'd love to be on the show. And I think that was yesterday. And so
Yep.
we really put this together really, really quick. I guess the pandemic allows us to have more availability than what we otherwise might have. But thanks for joining me, Scott. I'm really excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Let's start out with, let's kind of like go back to the beginning of, when you started in the fire service, how old were you, what inspired you to do it, and, some of the things that happened in your career along the way, and we'll work ourselves up to present day.
Okay. Got on the fire department in 95. And the reason I got on the fire department was I used to work at a auto repair shop, a dealership. And one of the main managers of the dealership happened to be on the fire department, and I moved to Frazee, and he hit me up and said, hey, why don't you put an app in? And I'm like, well, I've never thought about being a firefighter. He said, oh, you'll be great at it. You got mechanical skills, and that's important on a fire department. So I put my app in, and next thing you know, they're asking me to come, and I got approved. And
how old were you?
Department. I was, it was in 95, so I was about 25 years old.
Okay.
So, and yeah, I mean, instantly, it's just, I knew some of the guys, but I was kind of new to Frazee too. So, not only did it help, to get on the fire department, but I got to meet so many people. And then soon after that, I actually built a shop in Frazee. So I went into business in Frazee, and the community was just awesome. I mean, I never really thought about what it'd be like to be a firefighter until you go on some of the first calls, and it's like, wow, this is awesome. I'm doing something good. I'm helping people, and it was just a great feeling.
Now, when you first joined, what was, what was your family like? You're crazy, or were your family like, oh, that's awesome, that's really cool, or did you have family members that were already serving, or when I joined, my family thought I was nuts for wanting to do that. I was 18, and they're like, you're gonna get hurt, and but they got used to it. But what was that like for you on the start?
I guess my family members didn't really say much about it. I was kind of almost like a black sheep of the family. They were all married, and I was still single, and I was kind of off doing my own thing. And when I put my heart to something, mind to something, I'd do it.
Okay.
They started talking about the fire department. I got on. It's like I knew I was in the right place.
Yeah. Now tell me a little bit about Frazee as a town and the department itself and its makeup.
The town's about 1,300 in population. Highway 10 comes through it. It comes out of the cities, goes all the way up to Moorhead. We got the railroad comes through. We have a river. It's in lakes country, so we've got a lot of tourism, a lot of resorts. We've got a couple other intersecting highways that come through, some county roads, and then another state highway that's a little ways out of town. It's also in our area. And Frazee's got a fairly large area we cover. It's nothing to go 25 minutes in the truck before you get to the fire. That's where we rely a lot on mutual aid. We've got Detroit Lakes is one of the biggest around that we have for mutual aid. And that's only 15 miles down the road. So we're kind of a suburb, if you would, of Detroit Lakes. And if anybody knows Detroit Lakes, that's a huge tourist town. And that's actually where I grew up. It's a beautiful area. World's largest turkey. And that's not me. It's a statue. It's not actually me. So
I thought there'd be a Paul Bunyan. I thought there'd be a Paul Bunyan up there, not a big turkey.
Yeah.
I've not seen that. I'm gonna have to make my way up there now.
Yeah, it's just right off Highway 10, about half a mile, not even half a mile.
All right, I got a bucket list item.
Yeah.
And about how many calls would the department go on per year?
We don't go on a whole lot. Probably average a little over 50, actually. So it's not a whole lot. We do, the thing about small towns, though, like Frazee, and that's something that, since I started speaking, a lot of other volunteer firefighters from small towns come up and talk to me about is we know a lot of the people. That we go to the house fires and we know them personally, or we go to the car accidents, we actually know the victims because they're local. If it's kids, our kids might be the ones playing with their kids. It's a different story when you're, trying to extricate somebody that or where you're on a house fire and you see the family, in tears, and you actually know them, or they know what they might have went through prior to that. It might not be the first fire they've had. It's a little more personal, I think.
Yeah, I agree. The first department I joined was the town that I grew up in. So I knew a lot of people, kids, parents, people that I went to school with, teachers, people who worked where I shopped, and and it was a little bigger than Frazee, but nonetheless, you get to know a lot of people, and it is different when you're serving people. I mean, I think on the upside, you get a special kind of a sense of accomplishment when you're helping people, but there's also a special kind of challenge when you see those that personally that are experiencing loss or suffering, and I have had that firsthand experience as you describe it. In fact, as you discussed that, certain calls just popped into my mind that I hadn't thought about for years and years and years, that involved people that I knew, or houses that were on fire in my neighborhood. So yeah, that is an extra special challenge for those who serve in smaller communities.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from the person that has the house fire, the car accident, I feel it's kind of more comforting for them because they know you. And that for myself, I was a lot of times their mechanic or something, or their neighbor, or our kids knew each other. So, I mean, you knew them by name.
Right.
And they knew that we were going to do everything we could to help them. And, even after the fire or after the accident scene, it's still personal.
Right.
Right.
That. And I assume that there is a lot of community involvement between the fire department and the citizens too, whether it's like, open houses or fundraisers or community involvement type things, where the fire department in a small town really is stitched into the fabric of the community.
Yeah. And Frazee's probably like every other small town. We have tons of support. I mean, we have pancake feeds, we have auctions, we have other fundraisers, calendars, and the businesses step up and do what they can. Even the businesses from, mutual aid communities will step up for the calendar ads or whatever. And, it goes back and forth both ways.
Outstanding. And you served 24 years, all on Frazee, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So take us along in your career and bring us up to the point where there's some challenges that started occurring.
Okay. When I first got on the fire department, we were doing the house fires. Basically, I was pretty much it. Grass fires, house fires. And then there was car accidents in our area and drownings, things like that. And we'd show up. We didn't have any jaws of life. We didn't have any Gumby suits or rescue wetsuits or anything. And so, it was a helpless feeling when you show up and you can't do anything. Or, we're 15, 20 minutes out of Detroit Lakes and we hear the call and it's like, there's nothing we can do. And it's on the other side of us, and Detroit Lakes rolls through our town. It's like, this is 20 minutes, there's got to be something that we can be doing. So we got the Jaws of Life and we started training. Got the Gumby suits, ice water rescue suits. And we trained really hard. We had a bunch of mechanics on our fire department that really came in handy on extrication. And we started going on the calls. And we were gung-ho. I mean, to say we liked doing it, it's kind of a weird way of saying it, but it's what we trained for. So when we were there and we dove right into it, and we kind of learned as we went also by, unfortunately, some mistakes, nothing life-threatening or anything, but you learn really quick that every car accident's not the same. And you got, there's no A, B, C, and this is how you do it on every one. So we had to a lot of times we ended up using the Sawzall. That was one of our main tools. And a lot of departments don't use Sawzalls probably as much as we did, but we found they're a little quicker. But yeah, we got the jaws going, and unfortunately, we got a lot of calls. It was back to back, and we had lots of fatalities, and some of them were local, some of them were kids.
Is that because of Highway 10, or was it on other roads equally as much?
A lot of them were on Highway 10. We got Highway 29 that comes out, and it's really a lot of curvy roads, a lot of wooded areas where snow accumulates, and then in the open, it's all glare ice. A lot of stuff happening in the wintertime, ice water rescues. I think it was just a bad streak of luck. Almost every firefighter knows it just kind of goes in streaks sometimes, and you'll have a dead spot where you don't get no calls, and then you don't want to make the comment, well, we haven't had a call for a while.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, we had, we lost some in house fires, we lost some in car accidents, a lot of them in car accidents, and some were really, really ugly. I mean, some burnt up victims, and you get somebody that you don't even have to cut out of the car hardly. You just open the door and get them out, and they got a little blood in their lip, and you put them in the ambulance, and you find out that they're dead. They didn't make it to the hospital. It's like, how can that be? We walked them to the ambulance, basically. And then the next one, you get where the car's all mangled, and, you cut them on, and it's like, that person's not going to make it to the hospital. And you see them a week later walking down Main Street. And it's like, how, it starts messing with you. And then the benefits. We had a lot of benefits for people that died and their families and stuff. And, you just constantly see it. Sometimes it'd be a matter of cutting somebody out of a car, a kid or something. And in one situation, I cut a kid out of a car and went home, and small department, we just put the gear away. And it's not like we're full time, so we hang around the fire hall. We didn't debrief. So as soon as we put the gear away, we were free to leave. And in one situation, I went home, and before I even knew what hit me, I got out of the vehicle. My son wanted to play catch, I guess, and he hit me right in the chest with a baseball. And I wasn't even there. I mean, I don't even remember driving home. And when he hit me with that ball, it kind of brought me out of my funk I was in. And whoa, what just happened? The last thing I remembered was pulling a kid out of a car. So, it just starts building on you after a while. And and it wasn't just one or two, it just continually, I started focusing on the ones we lost. I didn't count the ones we saved. I just counted the ones we lost. And I even started keeping a scrapbook of car accidents. And I'd take some pictures of the car accidents. Back then we could do that and use them for training purposes. After we're done, we could go, like next training meeting, we'd go through and look at, hey, what could we have done different? And then I was an auto extrication captain. So, we had an awesome team, and we still do. But it was just like second, it was like the jaws of life for our hands. And we always had a plan A and a plan B, and everybody knew their place. And when instead of crowding everybody around one door, we'd have 3 different operations going on at the same time. And if all of a sudden we hit a wall on one, we had the second one going. But unfortunately, we got like that because we had a lot of them car accidents, and it's not I guess if you're going to learn, I'd rather learn through the textbook on something like that and not have to use it, but yeah, having to use it a lot.
Now,
and do was the debriefings.
When these were happening and it was affecting you, you were keeping a scrapbook of, as you say, the losses, not the victories. I have not been a person, and I've probably count this among my greatest blessings, that have experienced a post-traumatic injury from an incident. I've had incidents that bugged me for a while, but I was able to, tuck it away and put it in a place where I didn't have to think about it a lot. When you were on these calls, I'm just curious because I'd like to understand how this manifests. were you feeling like personally responsible for the outcome, and that's what was kind of eating at you? Or were you thinking, if only I would have done this instead of that, that the outcome might not have been what it was? What goes through your mind as you're dealing with this kind of loss?
Well, they train us, they train us to do all this, and how, the golden hour. And, even an ice water rescue, they say if a kid's underwater for an hour, you can bring them up. We can revive them and they'll live. They can live a normal life. But we weren't seeing that. We're like, we did our job. Okay, now why isn't it working out the way they told us this is going to work out in trainings? And I started taking it personal, and I actually kind of seen myself as a Grim Reaper, and I was jinxed. So after a while, it's like, okay, I'm showing up to these car scenes and they're dying, so it's got to be something me. I'm doing something wrong. My mind messed with me. I mean, I started drinking a lot. I tried to push everything back. I didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to think about it. But when I went to sleep, the nightmares came out, and I was going down to the bar every night. I didn't go home. I got angry. I was really short-tempered with my kids and my ex-girlfriend. I was turning into something I didn't understand what I was turning into, and I actually thought I had a split personality. I was this Jekyll and Hyde, because I could be the nicest guy in the world to my customers and my friends, and turn around and just take everything out on my ex-girlfriend and my two kids. And I mean, it hurt. So that's why, I started hanging out at the bars. I started not coming home. I tried to numb myself. I even got into meth. I started doing some meth with some friends at a music event, and, we just, I did it for some weekends during the summer, and things were all right. I figured I had it under control. I really didn't have a habit of it. It's just I could stay up and party longer with them. And one day we had a bad accident back in about 2010, and we showed up to the scene, and there was a vehicle rolled over in some ice water, and it was a swamp type thing. It was only about waist deep, but the vehicle was upside down in the dark ice water, and there was a high school age kid, and he was in there for about 10 minutes. And we got there, we got the Gumby suits, and I mean, it was a picture perfect rescue. We broke the window. I mean, reached in, grabbed him, pulled him to shore. They got his heartbeat going. They had him breathing. They got him to Fargo. They warmed him up. And about a month later, he died from a lung infection. And I tell you what, that was a kick in the guts. That was when the bucket was full, and I just lost it. I was the one that pulled him out of the vehicle. And I told myself, when I was pulling him through the water, I must have put something in his mouth. I must have, some swamp water, something got in his mouth, and it was because I did that. I pulled him out. It was me. And after that, my life just went into a tailspin, and I had enough. I mean, and I started doing a lot of meth. The nightmares were every time I closed my eyes, I'd see my kids burning to death and falling out of the sky on fire and going into the water and being trapped in a vehicle, and I couldn't get the jaws going. And every time I closed my eyes, so I decided I wasn't going to go to sleep anymore.
Well, hold on a second. Did you at that time give any consideration at that time to the fact that you needed help and that there was help available to you? Was that anywhere on your radar at all?
It was never talked about. Talk about any mental health. Like I said, I thought I was a Jekyll and Hyde. I thought I had a screw loose. I thought I was going to one day snap and go on a shooting rage, and I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know why I was yelling at my kids. I couldn't stop it. It was like there was a monster inside me, and and when, like, PTSD, that was only mentioned once that I remember in our fire hall, and that was on a bloodborne pathogens or something like that. They said, "Oh, look out for PTSD." I'm like, okay, whatever that stands for. That's a military thing. I'm looking around, only a couple of us that have been in the military, and I wasn't one of them. So, to talk about mental health is, and debriefings, that was something that we just didn't do.
Did any of your friends at this time, and the story will progress along, but at this early point, did any of your friends express any concern to you for your well-being, or were they just kind of ignoring it or ignoring you in the way that you were behaving?
At that point, nobody was really saying anything to me. I kind of sensed that they knew something was going on, but I was assistant chief. So it's kind of like you don't question the assistant chief. He knows what he's doing. I was lost. And I was hurting really bad and wanting to be dead. Some people ask me about my drinking. So, geez, you're drinking all the time. My ex-girlfriend talked to a lot of the firefighters and a lot of the firefighter spouses saying, hey, Scott's changing. He's mean all the time. And unfortunately, it didn't sound like they believed him, believed my ex-girlfriend. And that made it even worse for her, because now she's trying to get me some help and nobody believes her. I covered it up really well, especially the meth.
All right. Continue the story along here.
Okay. After that accident, and I went off the deep end, sort of, or I did. I started to do a lot more meth, so I wouldn't go to sleep. I told myself I wasn't going to go to sleep until I was dead. And I tried everything to die. I mean, I remember looking at some house burns and stuff and thinking, God, if I just pretend like I lost my footing and fall into this basement that's all flames and make sure nobody follows me in to try to get me out, so I'd be the only victim, But I just couldn't do it because I kept thinking that they're going to go in there. They're going to do everything they can. Somebody's going to get burnt trying to save me. Careless driving, drinking and driving. I just didn't want to be alive. I was begging God to take my life. I was cussing and trying to get God to kill me so I wouldn't have to do it myself. I wasn't that religious, but somehow, I don't know. There was even times in my shop where I'd walk across the shop floor and I'd be on meth and I'd be walking, so I knew I was in motion, and I'd blink my eyes and everything would go black, and it felt like 5 minutes, like a cell closed, and it was just cold and dark. But then all of a sudden it'd come to, and I was in motion, so I knew it was just a blink of my eyes, but it was almost like, God, am I stroking out? Am I that close to having a stroke or something? Am I that close to death? And is that what death is? Nothing? Just black? Is that how horrible of a person I am? But I couldn't pull myself out of it.
Now, did you have coworkers in your repair shop or did you work alone there?
For the most part, I worked alone. I had one mechanic that worked for me. He's seen a lot of the signs. I mean, he's seen my explosive temper. It was nothing for me to throw a wrench or just to go nuts, and lose my mind and, blame everything on everybody else. I was far from a calm person. I was having some financial issues, but for the most part, up till probably 2012, I was making a lot of money. So, I mean, I could afford to go out to the bar. I could tell myself that. And actually the meth, I was making the excuse that I was buying the meth by the ounce, which is a lot of meth. But I could justify buying it like that because I was getting it straight from the dealer and it was super cheap. But basically, if I could bill for 1 extra hour when I stayed there all night long, if I could bill for 1 extra hour, I could easily pay for the meth. It was no big deal. It wasn't, shouldn't say it's no big deal because meth is a bad deal. I mean, nothing good about it. But, I was justifying things and I wouldn't really work. I'd just sit there and look at my computer screen on my monitors and watch the deer that were outside by my shop. For some reason, I could do that for hours. That's the only peace I had in my life was what little nature I could find.
And in the midst of all this, are you still active on the fire department or responding to calls?
I was up till, soon after that accident in 2010. And another thing was I built a brand new shop in 2010. This shop was amazing. I had air conditioning, heated floor, huge shop. It was like a castle. It was a shop of my dreams. So in 2010, right after this accident happened, I was doing all this shop building. So, you know, everybody's like, well, he's always there 24/7. And it's like, well, yeah, he's got a lot going on. He's working on the shop, building the shop. Plus he's got the customers that he can't get anything done during the day because he's talking to the customers during the day and he's got to work at night. You know, they didn't know I never went home. I had the shop all blacked out so I could have all the lights and everything on inside. You'd never know it by looking at it from the outside. But yeah,
All right.
on the fire department, you know, I'd sit at the shop and the pager would start to go off. And it's like, okay, for some reason I just couldn't bring myself to go. I stepped down as assistant chief, but when that pager went off, there was just something in me that was just broken. I didn't want to do the fires anymore. I started not to go to the trainings, not to go to the meetings, not making the calls, fundraisers. I just made the minimum. I went from, you know, probably the most hours for fire calls down to barely making any, you know, and the sad thing about it is when I was in that shop and that pager went off, I was hurting so bad. I'd sit there and snort lines, and I had a radio, and I'd just wait till all the vehicles were out of the fire hall, and I'd sneak down there, and I didn't have to go out to the call because all the vehicles were gone. You know, I mean, it got to the point where I hated the fire department. It was just, I wasn't me anymore. I mean, I'd snort lines and look up at my kids' pictures, wondering why I wasn't home with them, and I knew if I went home, I'd just yell at them. It's a pain, like I just, you know, it's hard to describe, and I'm never going back there. I'm not ever going to let that happen to me again. I'm going to reach out every time now.
So, all right, continue the story on as to you know where this went for you.
In about 2012 is when I started doing a line an hour to stay awake, and I stopped sleeping. Still ran the shop. I just, you know, I don't know how my body worked on no sleep, but, you know, I ran the shop, isolated a lot more. And in 2014, my girlfriend left me around 2012. That's why I never had to go home anymore, because there was nothing there for me. I lived about 2 blocks from the shop, so I had my lights on timers, so at night I'd have the lights turn on at sunset and then turn off around 10 o'clock, and I'd even park my car in the driveway and either walk or ride my bike back down to the shop. So people thought I was at home. My neighbors did, and, you know, I found out later that, you know, they weren't as dumb as I thought they were. They knew something was wrong because they seen me riding bike back and forth at night and didn't make any sense. But after 2 years of no sleep and putting a lot of meth in my body, I went over to see my ex-girlfriend at her apartment. My 2 sons were there, and something just snapped. I did the same thing I did every time I was around them. I got angry and I yelled at them. I took things out on them that had nothing to do with them. And I remember leaving the apartment building and getting down to the shop, and I'm like, I've got to stop myself because I'm going to hurt them someday. I'm going to snap. I'm going to hurt somebody. You know, and I just don't like the person I am, and enough is enough. I mean, I've been hurting for so long that I got to put an end to this. So I reached into my drawer on my desk and I pulled out my .44 Magnum revolver, and just that fast, I put it to my head and I squeezed the trigger and it clicked. And this is the gun that is my favorite gun. It was a .44. It was not going to be half-ass. I was going to be gone. Hammer came down and no primers were touched, but it clicked on a revolver. So if you know anything about guns, that, you know, that's still to this day, you know, it used to kind of haunt me wondering how that could possibly happen. But now it's like I've accepted that the bullet's not coming down the barrel anymore. I'm a survivor. I made it. You know, I'm very fortunate. You know, I believe in God. I believe in miracles. Right after that happened, I slammed the gun down on the desk and climbed the big desk behind me. I had like a horseshoe desk, great big nice cherry wood or horseshoe desk. And I climbed the desk behind me. I was up against the wall and I was just terrified. I thought that gun was going to spin around and shoot me, or it was going to go off and blow my eardrums out. And I was sitting there not understanding how I could still be alive, or if this was, what happens after you're dead. I mean, nothing made sense. And I got down and I grabbed the gun and I unloaded the rounds out and I set it back down on the desk. And it was kind of weird because when I set it down, the cylinder actually wanted to close. When it was empty, all the shells were out, but I couldn't let that cylinder close. For some reason, I had to put a pin in the cylinder so the cylinder wouldn't close on the gun. That's how terrified I was that thing was still going to go off.
Thank you again to my guest, Scott Gieselhart, for sharing your experiences with us today. Remember that this is part one of a two-part interview, so be sure to tune back next week for the conclusion of our interview. Since 2007, SA Matters instructors have helped more than 1,200 organizations and 87,000 individuals improve high-risk decision-making, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, highway workers, aviation workers, oil refinery operators, and more. If you or someone you care about works in a high-risk, high-consequence, decision-making environment, then we are here to help to improve their safety and survival and to help them accomplish the most important mission of all, and that is to go home whole and healthy to the ones who love them. Since the start of the pandemic, I've had some amazing opportunities to present my programs to virtual audiences ranging from 6 to 400. A couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to present to the first responders of the Atlantic provinces of Canada. For those who may not be familiar with the region, that's the provinces of New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, and Labrador. Now, I've been to Newfoundland before as I presented for the Canadian Fire Chiefs Association in St. John a few years ago, and it's just beautiful. Over 12,000 firefighters serve in the Atlantic provinces, and roughly 300 of them attended the program live, and the playback link was shared with all 12,000 Atlantic province firefighters. That's quite a value for the investment. If you're interested in seeing all of our events, past, virtual, postponed, and future, they're all listed on the SA Matters website. If you're interested in seeing where we've been or where we're going, just head over to our website and click on the program dates under the live training tab at the top of the homepage. If you're interested in hosting a virtual program now or a live program when the pandemic is over, just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage and I'll give you a call. Remember to check the show notes for how to subscribe to our newsletter, how to follow us on social media, and there we share ideas about how to improve situational awareness and how to make better decisions under stress and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 333 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you again to my guest, Scott Gieselhart. Remember that this is part one of a two-part interview, so be sure to check back next week for part two. Thank you to our amazing platinum sponsor for 6 years now, Midwest Fire. Thank you to our feature segment sponsor, Gasaway Virtual Training. And thank you to our associate sponsor, Chief Miller. And most importantly, thank you, the listeners and viewers of this show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters show with Dr. Richard Gasaway. If you're interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit his website, samatters.com. If you're interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for a program, or if you would like to be a guest on his show, click the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage.